After 50 years, do the owners and creators of Dungeons & Dragons finally have the One Ring within their grasp? We'll take a look at that in a minute, but before we get started, of course, I want to remind everyone that today's video is brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Games. Hellebarde makes the kinds of adventures they'd like to play. Whether it's for 5th edition, Castles and Crusades, or OSR, Old School is in play at the table, and right now they are having a clearance sale on their in-print 5th edition products. That's right. Use the code 5EOOP at checkout on their website, hellebardegames.com, to receive 50% off your order. And this covers a wide-ranging series of modules, from a dismal swamp full of lizard men to a mysterious caravan trail. They probably got something that you would like to run at your table. So check them out, Hellebarde Games. Now, today's story comes to us actually from Polygon, and this is kind of an interesting piece, so let's jump into this. And by the way, folks, if you haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. It really helps us out. So let's take a gander here. Bring this up. Lord of the Rings arrives for D&D's 5th edition next month. Make a save versus irony. Official D&D rules for hobbits are on the way. The Lord of the Rings novels by J.R.R. Tolkien, a series which directly inspired creation of Dungeons & Dragons. No, it didn't, but it's Polygon. Let's move on. Will be formally adapted for the iconic role-playing game's 5th edition, but it's not D&D's current publisher, Wizards of the Coast, that will bring that product to market. Instead, it's the hugely successful team at Free League Publishing, which has 2 brand new books up for sale starting May 9th. We're big fans of the One Ring role-playing in the world of Lord of the Rings. The reboot of Francesco Nepitello and Marco Maggi's tabletop RPG, originally published in 2011, was released by Free League in 2022 after a hugely successful crowdfunding campaign. At the time, reviewer Linda Codega called its homespun setting a microcosm of a massive familiar world that pushes the narrative beyond the traditional hero's journey. Because, you know, that's something we all wanted. We found the box starter set in particular to be charming, with extraordinary art and more historical hobbits inside than you can shake a stick at. A 5th edition port of the setting and its many adventures sounds like just the thing to open the setting up to a wider audience at the table. But let's linger just a moment on the many ironies of this current licensing situation. When D&D was young and bold and run out of a 2-story residential home in rural Wisconsin, the team at TSR, the game's original publisher, was working on a new board game titled The Battle of Five Armies. It was named, of course, after the famous battle mentioned in The Hobbit. It's not just mentioned in The Hobbit. It's the entire last quarter of the book. Who writes these things at Polygon? Which took place between 5 factions from Middle-earth on the slope of Lonely Mountain. But the game ended up being an albatross, and the controversy surrounding it would ultimately change the course of D&D forever. Once again, Polygon completely fumbling the ball there. It wasn't just the Battle of Five Armies, but other mentions. The Tolkien estate, of course, took issue, and according to a post on EN World Forums by D&D creator Gary Gygax himself, the resulting lawsuit was settled out of court. Here's a quote from Gygax's own 2002 message board post. TSR was served with papers threatening damages to the tune of $500,000. The main objection was to the board game we were publishing. I stand corrected. The author of that game had given us a letter from his attorney claiming the work was grandfathered because it was published after the copyrights for Tolkien's works had lapsed and before any renewals were made. The action also demanded we remove Balrog, Dragon, Dwarf, Elf, Ent, Goblin, Hobbit, Orc, and Warg from the D&D game. Although only Balrog and Warg were unique names, we agreed to Hobbit as well and kept the rest. Of course, the board game was dumped and thus the suit was settled out of court. The great irony here, of course, is that Wizards' recent attempts to alter the open gaming license would have required that Free League pay a hefty licensing fee back to the owner of D&D based on the success of this project. But after a weeks-long campaign by fans who showed their discontent online, and by canceling their subscriptions to D&D Beyond, Wizards capitulated and moved the OGL and its associated rules into public domain. That means that Free League is able to release its adaptation of the One Ring TTRPG for 5th edition D&D without paying Wizards a dime. As if to cement its victory, Free League was even so bold as to change the name of its product to The Lord of the Rings Role-Playing. Further piling up in the ironies, Wizards is currently embroiled in another lawsuit, this time with a newly resurrected version of TSR. In that lawsuit, the new TSR asserts Wizards let its own copyrights lapse, skipping over the necessary renewals to keep several of its legacy brands alive. That is an ugly situation. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future show. Anyway, notably, neither The One Ring nor The Lord of the Rings role-playing are the first attempts at a TTRPG literally based on the world of Middle-earth. Middle-earth role-playing, affectionately known as MERP to its fans, was published in 1984. Later, Cubicle 7 adapted the setting to 5th edition with its adventures in Middle-earth. Published in 2016, The Lord of the Rings role-playing will be published as a 236-page hardcover book, including 6 new classes and 6 new cultures, including The Hobbit's Return to D&D. Shire Adventures, 104-page collection of 5 lengthy encounters, will also arrive on May 9th. Now, that's kind of an interesting and very short look, because in the early 2000s, there was a Middle-earth role-playing game. I've actually got a few bits and pieces of it around here, called The One Ring. But it is out of print, unobtainium, unfortunately. It was kind of an okay system, but anyway, so this is kind of interesting, and I want to know what you guys think, of course. Please let me know in the comments below. Will you incorporate this Lord of the Rings lore into your games? Now, I've said before that if it comes out for 5th edition, it can be backported to earlier versions of D&D very easily, given the very simplistic nature of 5e. So will you bring this into your OD&D or your AD&D games? Let me know down in the comments below. Personally, I don't know. I'm of two minds about Lord of the Rings role-playing. On the one hand, I think it could really open up a lot of exciting stuff. But on the other hand, is Lord of the Rings really a universe that's that well suited for long-term gaming? If you're playing in the War of the Ring, you kind of know what's going to happen, and if you're not one of the 9, then what are you doing, really? But again, let me know in the comments below, and we'll talk about it down there. Of course, tonight we have a live stream coming. We're going to be playing some Gamma World, and we're going to have a little bit of preamble ramble. We'll look at some old Dragon magazine, and yeah, we'll have a good time. So I'll see you all then. Everybody, have a wonderful afternoon. Be good to each other, and remember, keep it secret, keep it safe.